Okay, hi everyone. I think it's time to start, and welcome to the PS Placeholder session. Nice to see you all in beautiful Lausanne. So in this session, I'll walk you what's that nifty little utility called PS Placeholder I created several years ago. And just to clarify, because of the title, it doesn't have anything in common with Jinja. It just serves the same purpose as Jinja. And even intentionally, it's for those of you that don't want to learn additional expression language or additional kind of a language to do the same things you already can do with PowerShell. So before going further, let me thank the organizers and the sponsors for bringing us here in this beautiful venue. And I can tell you as an organizer of the Bulgarian community, the Bulgarian PowerShell community, that we don't get in such beautiful venues. So also thanks my sponsor, personal sponsor, to bring me here and also to bring me for a few days in the Alps prior to that. So it's a pleasure meeting all of you, and I'm Georgi Ivanov. I'm as called Automation Technology Lead in KPMG, which means that I'm still hands-on engineer for something like 70% of my time, and for the rest of the time in the company, I strive to share the knowledge around PowerShell and the utilities around it and the whole ecosystem inside the company. I host a so-called DevOps community inside the company. It's KPMG Germany, I would say, although I come from Bulgaria. We are part of KPMG Germany. And also, as you can see in my free time, I sometimes build some utilities, one of which is this PSPlaceholder utility. As I mentioned, organizer of the Bulgarian PowerShell user group. You can find me in X, or this is my GitHub handle. So I've prepared a more introductory session to introduce you with this utility, but first let me tell you what's the use case of this utility. The use case is when you have the need of replacing placeholder in various kinds of text, like email templates that you would like to send emails to from the same template to different persons. Most probably these emails will have some placeholder to be replaced before the send. Or something like template parameter files, which have some placeholders that have to be replaced as part of the CI/CD process in your organization, or some other use cases similar to that, where you simply have to replace placeholders in text. So I've created this. The story behind it is quite long. Quite often I was engaged from my colleagues and peers in Bulgaria to help them with some things similar to handling placeholders or reading their templates, which were like ARM templates back in the days with Jinja expressions inside them, which is terrible to understand, so I can help them. So at some point, I invested a bit of my free time to develop this PS Placeholder module. It can be found in GitHub, also in the PowerShell gallery, of course. So this is it. It's called simply PS Placeholders. Probably it's not the most intuitive name, but you know, one of the hardest things in software is naming things. So, yep, and the agenda is first we will look at how placeholders look like, what you can do with placeholders, in what use cases I've seen personally the module being in use. We'll talk about some additional scenarios and how it works behind the scenes. It builds on the concept of regular expressions, and we had Matthias introducing us previously, layering the foundation of regular expressions, so I don't have to explain them now. Thanks for that. And yeah, this is the idea. I know that my English is not my native language, so if you have any troubles understanding me, please feel free to interrupt me, or if you have any questions, please feel to interrupt me, or of course we will have the 15 minutes at the end to discuss anything that is in interest. So with that being said, this is what PS placeholders are. They are constructed with this prefix to curly braces in the front end and the end, and the name of the placeholder. And this is what I call generic placeholders. They are pretty simple. You put that somewhere in some template file or in the content of wherever file you want. And there is a command which you can execute and say, I want to replace this value everywhere you see it with, excuse me, this placeholder everywhere is being seen with a particular value. And that's the simple use case. It's similar to what you can do with a lot of other utilities. And there is this more advanced scenario where you can have these executable placeholders if you specify this execution sign, like all, because in PowerShell, that's the execution operator. After that, you can use PowerShell syntax to transform the data into whatever format you want. So variables become input, so you can provide placeholder values for these variables, and you can do whatever you want with the data. So you can convert it to our string, to uppercase, to lowercase, to uppercase. You can change the formatting of the data. You can join collections. You can do whatever you want. And the main use case here is that in the file, this is the place where you have all the context and you can take decisions how particular data should be formatted. And that's why I wanted to put this to benefit from the fact that you already know PowerShell, you already know how to format things with PowerShell, how to manipulate strings with PowerShell. And I thought, why don't I develop it this way so I don't have to learn yet another language for manipulating strings. So that being said, let me walk you through a few examples I have prepared. By the way, the presentation and the demos can be found in my GitHub. It's GOGBG. And this is the repository. It's public already. And I will also use the functionality of the VS Code, the source control functionality. So when we replace placeholders, it's obvious to see what gets replaced with what. Okay, so that being said, of course, you can install the PSPlaceholders like that. It relies on another dependency called IST extensions. It's a simple module to work with abstract syntax trees in PowerShell. And this is how it works. This is a simple placeholder, and this is how you feed the data to the placeholder. So you are saying, basically, I want to replace first name with this value. And it will work as expected. Here is the output. My name is John. So when you want to have more than one placeholder, that's how you provide the values to more than one placeholder. And of course, you can use the same placeholder multiple times in this string. Also, by the way, if we check, the module itself provides two public commands. The command to understand what placeholders are present in particular place, and the command to replace placeholders. It's a very simple utility, although let's see your opinion, it can be in great favor. Also, you can provide the option to replace placeholders in files. Like this I specify that I want to replace some placeholders in files, and here in Git, in a moment, we will see what was replaced with what. And here you can see that's the previous content of the file, and that's how it was replaced, as you can expect. Interesting thing is that the data that I supplied here, because I said for first name provide John, last name some string, and here I provided object, which is of type datetime. So behind the scene, PowerShell is casting this data to string, something to be aware of. What else you can do is, instead of providing a particular file, you can provide a folder, and it will look and replace all placeholders in all files recursively underneath this folder, as you would expect from a PowerShell utility. So this time, it replaced the content into all these files. All right. And what else can we do with that? let me see what I have prepared. Yeah, that's interesting. Let's run that again in against some other folder. Previously, I ran that against some folder. Now I'm running it against some other folder. And here, you can see that these placeholders are also supported in the file names. So this was how the file was named prior to the update, and that's how it was renamed based on some placeholder. So that's very useful. That was in great use for me personally, where I had to deploy a huge amount of template files, like ARM template files back in the days. So when I had to deploy a line of business application, this was the use case. I had to deploy a line of business applications multiple times. And each time I had to provide something like a combination of 30 parameter files. And they should have been, you can imagine that at the end I end up with a folder full of parameter files. And I wanted them named accordingly so I can distinguish which parameter file is used by which application and so on and so forth. So I ended up using this tool actually, to construct a template and provide something like project name and date as part of the file name. So at the end, I ended up with a huge folder with parameter files named accordingly, the project they are used and the application they are used in. Okay, so these are some of the basic functionalities of PS placeholders. What we can do else is we can use the get PS placeholder commandlet to get an inventory of what placeholders are present where, and it will return like a report. These placeholders were used in, and because this is not part of a file, that's why these statistics are empty. However, if we have a folder with a lot of, this is a file actually. Let's see, it says, okay, I found these placeholders in this number of files. So this was found once in a file, in the file content. This is in the file name, it's not part of the file name. And underneath, what folder is that? Finding placeholder files. Underneath files, as you can see, I have some placeholders that are part of the file name itself. So here it says, oh, this particular placeholder is used in this number of times. So this should give you like a good understanding of which placeholders are used where, which can be in handy in different situations. I have some examples further down the line to show you that. And there is this another functionality where if you want to be more granular and find out exactly where which placeholder is used, you can provide some reference variable and say, I want to find what placeholders are used in this folder, but please feed this reference variable with the statistics per file. So if I execute that, so this is actually the output of the reference variable. So you can see that, let me make this a bit wider. So you can see that we have in this file, this placeholder in its name, and these placeholders in its content. So you can get a pretty good understanding of which placeholders are used where. And that's one thing I was missing in some of the other utilities I tried several years ago. I'm not sure what's the situation now. There might be better tools than this in the PowerShell marketplace, PowerShell gallery. But yeah, that's how you can get an understanding of what placeholders are used where. Then when you want to replace placeholders, of course, there might be different situations like you haven't supplied all the values. Like this is a string that contains first name and last name, but during the replacement, you are supplying the value only for one of the placeholders. So as you might expect, or at least as I might expect, by default, the engine should throw and say you haven't supplied all the required input. And that's how it behaves. That's how it behaves by default, unless you specify this switch, of course. You can say, I know what I'm doing, please update all the placeholders and leave the ones that are not supplied with values as they are. So this gives you more control of what you are doing, which was, again, another thing which was my personal requirement, which I haven't saw in any of the existing tools back then. And also, in the case where you have only these two placeholders required, but you are supplying data for more placeholders, it would be good to have some warning saying us, okay, we replaced your placeholders, but there is this input that probably, with the several iteration of your code, are legacy now. So you have this warning. And what I have here, and of course, you can expect the update placeholder, PS placeholder to behave the same. Doesn't matter whether you are specifying a particular string to be replaced or a set of files or a set of folders. By the way, path accepts array of strings, and this can be either multiple files, it can be multiple folders, or it can be a combination of multiple files all together with multiple folders. So it will go down and traverse everything you provide to it. Okay, so I guess I hope you are starting to get some understanding of the tool. And let me go back to my slides and tell you a bit more of the use cases where it might be handy and the scenarios in which it might not be the best tool to start with. So my personal requirements when I created the tool was, I wanted a tool which I can run in the pipeline, and there are a variety of tools where you have similar functionalities, like in Azure DevOps. There are a lot of steps in the pipeline marketplace where you can replace tokens, but I cannot use these same tools locally, right? And I'm a big fan of the pattern of being able to reproduce everything that's happening in the pipeline locally also for debugging purposes and scenarios like this. So I can get really into the details what's happening and to have control over it. So that was my first requirement. I wanted the tool to have all these powerful features like allowing me to understand exactly what placeholders are used to where, whether I have provided all the information, whether I have provided more than the necessary information. So I know what I'm doing. So typically, I would advise of using these or similar tools only when the native tool doesn't provide you the necessary capabilities you need. For example, back in the days when I used that for PowerShell, for ARM template parameter files, there was no concept of bicep. Now that we have bicep parameter files which are more powerful than ARM template parameter files. So this tool might not be necessary, use it only when necessary. There is another cool thing I will talk about, that sometimes when you put such placeholders in places that are not supposed to contain such placeholders, the linters get angry. Like if I put such thing in JSON file, and if I know that in a particular place there should be a collection, and if instead of putting a collection I put a placeholder, the linter will tell me this is not a valid JSON expression. I have a few examples of that. Other use cases are like typical pattern is the configuration file of an application. Usually developers put placeholders there so that you deploy the same application with different settings in your different environments. And these placeholders get replaced during your CI/CD pipeline. So that's another use case of using this tool. And let me show you some other scenarios where we personally use these two. So not sure if all of you are aware of this functionality in Azure called Azure Template Specs, where you can basically upload your bicep or arm template in Azure and save it as an artifact called template spec. But on top of that, you can provide a UI definition file and build a powerful UI in front of this template spec. So this is an example of deployment of SQL Server template where we have provided such UI file, and you can put wherever input elements you want here. For example, you can invoke additional blades, and these are some of the native Azure portal blades for selecting users from the directory. And also some blades provide validation from capabilities, like here for change ID, it says, no, your change ID should be, is it readable? No, your change ID should be exactly following this regular expression. And in our scenario, we have something like 70 or so template specs in our company. And you can imagine that this change ID should have the same regular expression in each one of them. So instead of hard coding the regular expression everywhere, we reached to these two to do something like, let me close this. Here is the Azure template spec UI example, and here I have two template specs, which are again the ARM template and the UI file. And in the UI file, I use placeholders, like in a lot of places, as you can see. But what I'm doing is I have this configuration file here that consists of all the validations for all the Azure resources I use around all the template specs. So here I see I have a simple representation of how a change ID should look like and what should be the validation message of when that's not the case. And in the UI file itself, I refer to this like this. And we haven't seen yet how exactly executable placeholders look like, because this is an executable placeholder, as you can see. But basically, my script feeds UI string as the result of this configuration file. So this configuration file is fit into the variable UI strings, and I'm basically saying, please give me this subproperty, and this subproperty. And if I run the example, and that's what's happening here, look. So I'm getting the content of the configuration file. Let me execute this. So it is as hash table. So it's a hash table of the configuration file. And after that, I'm just saying, please replace all the placeholders in all my template files by specifying that UI string should contain this hash table. Another good example of being able to understand what placeholders are required in what places is like here I can see, all my template files require all these placeholders. And some of them are executable, some of them are generic. So let's see what happens. Here I'm using this adapt to JSON that I will explain in a second. But let's see what will happen here. I should click refresh. So here is my template file, where, as you can see, this was the, oops, I cannot select it, but this was the original value of the placeholder, and it was replaced with that. And that's what the adaptation does actually. Because in order to make the linter happy, I should put the placeholder in string. Otherwise, it's not happy. And to show you that, let me discard all those changes and go over it again. So where was it? Here. So this way, or actually it was the placeholder called sub. What's the name of the placeholder? It was allowed subscriptions, something. Yeah, so here in JSON, if you are supplying a single string, you have to enclose it in quotes, right? If it's an array, you have to not enclose it in quotes. But at write time, during authoring, you don't know whether it's a string or an array. So you don't know what to put here. And as you can see, if I put it this way so it gets properly replaced in case it's an array, the linter is angry with me. However, if it is this way, and if I'm not doing this adaptation, the array will be inside the string, which will not work also. So I've put this additional functionality of update PS placeholder to tell it, I know that this file is JSON, and you are free to replace the placeholders in appropriate format, considering the type of the data that is to be replaced. And of course, this will do it only if the placeholder is the only thing inside the string. If there is anything like this, it will not do the adaptation. So let me run that again. And as you should see that all the placeholder will be replaced. Like here it was about subscriptions. This got replaced to whatever I fed here, like an array of the 2 subscriptions. And here the executable placeholder were replaced with the actual regular expressions behind the scenes for the UI validation of the template specs. So this is a use case in which such utility is quite handy. Another case might be scenario where, and please tell me if I'm going too fast. Let me close all that. Another scenario might be where you have some kind of HTML document, let's say you are about to send as an email. And this is an example, let me make it bigger, of a template that contains some placeholders. And as you can see, these are executable placeholders. And in all of the places, or actually there are only 2 inputs that I have to provide. And we can check that if I just say, if I define this variable, just say get PS placeholders path, file path, format table probably. There are only 2 executable inputs, as you can see here. The first one is disks, and the second one is date. So I have to provide only these 2 inputs, like what's the current date and what are the disks. And in this specific scenario, this is a report of unattached disks in Azure, let's imagine. So based on that information, as you saw, it will here select the unique subscriptions among all these disks and count them. And here it will just show the count of all the disks that were provided. And here it will select only the disks that are currently attached to virtual machines and count them. And here it will populate a HTML table because it's transforming the hash table into an HTML fragment, right? And this is how powerful are these executable placeholders. You don't have to learn any other expression language. You just have to know how to transform between different types to string, so you can start leveraging them. Okay, let me execute that and see the result. Here it is.
Is there any way to get the update command to write the output to another file? Because otherwise I'm overwriting my template every time.
Yeah, I have such an example, but the basic way is just copy the file into a temporary folder and update the copy, not the original file. It's not a basic built-in functionality. I guess we can easily add additional parameter called output folder to achieve to have this native in the command.
Or output a string and then I can write it out.
Yeah, you can do that. You can get the content and not provide the path, but the string here. So it will return the updated string.
Yeah, but then I need to manually read the file into.
Yeah. Okay, and exactly into that use case, I have this third scenario where I have a bunch of parameter files, and in my case, it's the parameter file for SQL Server deployment and the parameter file for Synapse Workspace deployment, and they all have a bunch of placeholders inside them. Probably we can get a better understanding if I run the get PSPlaceholders. Let me make this bigger. So we can see, oh, these are the placeholders that are used in all these files. And when I have to update them, I can just create a temp folder, make sure that this temp folder is empty at the moment, or actually delete it first if it's there and then create it. That's how I'm ensuring that the folder is empty. Then make a copy of the original files there, and then update the placeholders in the new temporary location so I don't override the original templates. And here I have to fill in the parameter values. And this is another example of where this ability to get an understanding of what placeholders are required is in handy, because I can easily, for example, select all this from here. I can paste it here like this. Oops. And I can say this, I want this to be something like some value. And when I run that, it will replace all the placeholders, I guess. Path is not initialized. Probably I should have initialized. Oops. Probably I should have run that also. And now they are all replaced. So here are my updated files, as you can expect. And as you saw, there were some placeholders in the file name itself. Okay, let me discard all that changes. So we get a better understanding of what's changed. Some of the advanced scenarios, although we covered some of them, this is primarily the concept of executable placeholders. And this is how you, inside a string, how you, depending of whether you supply a collection or a single element, you format that nicely. So in this case, I'm supplying a credential of strings, and this will join them. If it's a collection, they will be represented like this. Registered attendee journalist Bob. And if it was a single person, it will be formatted like this. So the key thing, or the key design thing I had in mind is that I should not care how the data will be visualized when I supply the data. I would like to supply the data in the original type of which it makes sense. And then in the place where the data should be replaced, I provide the expression how the data of that particular type should be visualized so it makes sense in the context of the placeholder. Okay, so this is how you, for example, use the fact that you are providing a rich object of type datetime. Where was that? Here. So I'm providing the date type, and here I'm saying I want only the day of the week, and after that I want to format the date type to some date type format. So this says registration closes on Tuesday at some time. This is the current time. or do all at the same time. As you can see here, I'm in this placeholder. I'm formatting the date. Here, I'm counting how many objects are in this variable, and if it is if they are more than one, I will put R. Otherwise, I will put is. This will be the result of the placeholder. And this is just counting the people, and this is outputting the people joined by comma. So another example of how powerful such simple utility can be. Okay, and I told you in order to make the linters happy, I can use this functionality of adapt to JSON. Doesn't matter whether I provide strings or arrays. Yeah, we've pretty much covered all that. And that being said, the only thing left is to get some understanding of how it works, unless you have any questions. It's not anything complex at all, but first of all, I would like to start with how it does not work. And there is a current limitation that inside an executable placeholder, or in general, inside the placeholders, you cannot have curly braces. And in PowerShell, we use curly braces a lot in these general commands like where object for each object and so forth and so on. Also, some, what are they called? Some methods, generic methods like where for each also require such curly braces. So this is currently not supported unless I find out how to make the regular expression behind the scene to support them. We have to use workarounds like I used here. Somewhere, where I had. Where was it? It was here, I'm pretty sure. Ah, no, it was in the HTML template. So the workaround here was, like here. I'm using this syntax of where object, probably you are familiar with it, where you specify which property have to be evaluated. And in this case, because it's a Boolean property, it returns either true or false. Right? Like when you have something like this data. Let me put all this in a like this. So you have the disks, which is a collection of these disks. You cannot do something like inside the placeholders, you cannot do something like where object like this. This is a filter script, I guess. And you cannot say is attached because these curly braces are not supported inside the placeholders. So that will not work. However, you can use this where property is attached, and you don't have to compare it against anything because it's already a Boolean property. So it will return either true or false. So this is the current workaround. Okay, and so how it works is, I'm glad that, again, that Matthias didn't cover that, but in regexes, there is this option in the regex.net class to use replace, providing the string that contains the placeholders, the pattern, the regex pattern that should match the placeholders, and also a delegate, so that will be used, that will be invoked every time a pattern is matched. So it's up to you in this delegate to declare what should happen when a match occurs. So here is the pattern. Matthias already laid down the foundation of regexes, so you should be able to understand it easily. There are a bunch of groups, and he said here this should require that these characters are not present. This is how I say, please don't use curly braces inside the placeholders. And this is how the, I will not go into the details here. It's for the sake of you offline figuring out how it works. This is the class and the method that will, so pretty much here I'm saying this is the definition, I'm creating an instance of it, and I'm saying when a match is found, please call in this instance this method. Where is the method? This method. But the key thing here is that I'm providing an instance of an object, and the regex will invoke a particular method when a string occurs. And the benefit of that is that when the next string occurs, when the next match happens, the instance is still alive. So every time the method is executed in the context of the instance. And to give you understanding why is that valuable, we can have something like a counter in the instance and preserve this in the context of the whole execution. Like I can say here, replace the placeholders, and here was the first match. It incremented the counter. As you can see, that's what the match is doing. Then the second match incremented the counter once again, and the third match incremented the counter another time. So pretty much the whole module is built around the concept of this, I would call it advanced way of using regular expressions and around a regular expression. And that's pretty much everything I planned to cover. Oops, I missed the slide. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, maybe one question I noticed about the spaces, right? It's a rather space like sensitive.
No.
Because in Jinja usually you like make the template expression as spaces, and I noticed here, for example, if I write this expression, like for example first name with the curly braces, right, and I put spaces, then actually the string I got to replace also has like need two spaces there, right?
So if the spaces are outside of the placeholder, they are preserved. They are part of the string. If they are inside the placeholder, they will not be present after the replacement. So it's for readability purpose, I've put spaces somewhere. They should not be preserved.
But I mean the bar, like in the template, right? If I have first name and it's inside the template, and I put inside the template spaces, then it will not be replaced if I don't provide a...
So let me...
You will ignore the white space inside.
No, it will not.
So here is the example. Yeah, here is the example. If I put space, like, if I don't have space like here.
No, put the space inside first name. Yeah, and then actually this will not be up.
Oh, this was not the right example.
Then
I know it should be.
Like the value also needs to have...
Yeah, you are correct, sorry, my bad. Yeah, it considers, in this scenario, it considers the whole thing as the name of the placeholder.
Yeah.
So your placeholder should be named with a space.
Also with a space,
Yeah. This is not the case in the executable placeholders. Because...
It's like a nice feature, right? To actually
Yeah, I can trim them. Yeah. I believe it's quite easily trimmable. Yeah.
And maybe one other thing, because with this replacement, right, we kind of need to like make temp files. So could we, I don't know, maybe useful thing would be allow pipelining.
Yeah.
Templates, and then you get maybe files also, and then them out.
To be honest, I'm not sure whether it's supported now. Although I developed the tool several years ago, every time I go there, I have to reintroduce myself to it. And that's the reason why I don't want to learn additional languages, because it's already too much of them. Not that I don't use Jinja in my hobby project, but still, I have to check whether It supports, I guess we can check. I'm pretty sure it's not supported at the moment. But yeah, it's another quick to do.
You have your GitHub repository on there.
Yeah, it's open. Okay, any other questions? Okay, I hope it can be handy to some of you that might need such a utility that works both in the pipeline and locally, and that can give you all the control you need. Thanks, everyone.